This is the Marketing Agency Power Hour, and I'm your host, Cal Wilder. Each week, we'll power through discussions on business challenges, success stories, and game-changing strategies. This show is sponsored by SmartBooks, provider of bookkeeping and accounting for marketing agencies. Let's get started. So I'm really excited to be talking to today's guest. He's an entrepreneurial advocate, a sustainability thought leader, an expert communicator, and an impactful founder. He's a seasoned strategic communications specialist with 25 years in marketing, known for turning clear vision into smart action. He's the founder and president of Longview Strategies, a strategic communications firm. Evan Zall, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Wow, I sound great. I love it.
So let's dig right in here. First question: what is the single most powerful strategy for success in your firm these days?
Yeah, we got a set of core values, and right at the top of our core values is leading the way, and that is always our most successful strategy, and it's always how we have our best relationships with our clients when we can be leaders for them, leaders in our own right, and really, for lack of a better term, have a seat at the strategy table at their company. That allows us to really start tying things together. So, marketing strategy is you'll probably hear and are probably aware of. Often it boils down to a formula. It's a numbers game, depending on what tactics you're using. So the differentiating factor is what are you gonna do in order to apply the formula in a way that's particularly successful for your client? And that all comes down to where you're putting your stake in the ground, who at these companies you are elevating visibility for, what types of products, what are the messages, all of that background work. If we can lead the way on that, then our programs are pretty much always successful. And the feedback we get is just great. I mean, yes, we help our clients grow. Yes, we help our clients find stability. But what we hear most often is that we make our clients better overall. And that just, that feels great.
So how did you get to the point where you feel like you can be such a thought leader for these clients? Do you focus on particular industries you've developed expertise in, or what kind of got you to the point where you're not kind of executing on a plan, but helping design that plan?
That's a great question. Really focusing on specific industries is sort of the answer. And we have a model where we will bring experts onto our team. If we don't have the expertise that a client is looking for in their industry, then we will go find that expert, because knowing their industry as well as they do is what allows us to really develop these strategies and be so successful. I have in my career been a leader in an owner of marketing firms that are more generalized marketing firms, generalists, where we sort of would go across all different industries, and that expertise wasn't necessarily part of the equation. And you can be successful that way, but that's all about the formula. That's all about the numbers. That's about saying, we have an approach and a process. We will apply it to your company, and we will get results, and we will show you what those what those numbers are. That's what some companies are looking for, and that's definitely there's value in that type of marketing. We have a lot more fun when we really know the industries inside and out. And for us, that's we spent a lot of time in the sustainability world. So sustainability, sustainable finance, cybersecurity, healthcare. These are a few of our favorite things where we spend a lot of time in those segments, and our expertise then becomes our client's expertise, and it's a great marriage.
What is it that you like about those particular segments, or working in those segments?
Yeah, change agents. I mean, we like working with clients who are changing the world, and that doesn't mean we're not working with the biggest companies in the world. But we are working with companies that are all contributing to a better future, really. That helps me get up in the morning. That helps our teams get more passionate about what we're doing. And we know that when we're having an impact on one of our clients, there is an upward ripple effect where we are having an impact on the big picture. And that means a lot to us.
We were chatting previously, Evan, around how some of these words started out very lofty, but now there's a bit of a backlash or a trigger around some of these words like sustainability or maybe diversity, right? So how do you navigate how you communicate? Because you're really a communications driven firm, not
Yep.
necessarily a third party marketing reseller kind of firm, right? So how do you manage communication around some of these words that have started to have some controversy attached to them?
Yeah, it's a great academic study, and it's such a weird time where something that on the surface, sustainability, how can there be a negative connotation to sustainability? And yet here we are. So it really is, it's case by case, and there are words, diversity and inclusion is one that jumps out as, suddenly just the negative connotations around it are so prominent that you have to take a step back and look at the strategy and gauge the risk of if you have a strong DEI program and you've been built around that, are you going to change it? Are you willing to do that? And we have that conversation. We have had that conversation with a number of clients over the past 6 months. And often right now there are some tweaks because this is all about language, and it's more about defining what it is that you are doing as a company and what makes you you than it is about a specific word. And the threading the needle is doing that without confusing your audience. So it's been really interesting. I mean, I could talk for days about particularly ESG and sustainability. We've done a lot of work in ESG in particular, both on the financial side, on the Wall Street side, and on the corporate side. And the reality is that basically all of this noise and the backlash is making the fundamentals better. We're going to end up in a better place. And that wasn't the idea. I know that's not why this backlash really happened, but what you're seeing is companies sort of that jumped on the bandwagon a few years ago and were really tackling this or increasing their profile and their visibility for marketing's sake. And, it wasn't authentic. And what we've always preached to our clients is it has to be authentic. This has to really be a fabric of part of the fabric of your company. If it's not, it's going to end up hurting you. What's happening now is the companies that were not authentic are just dropping it and they don't want to touch it with a 20-foot pole. And the companies that are doing it for the right core business reasons and it's a fabric of their company, they're sticking with it. It's still there. It's just it's extremely prominent. There's a huge market. It's just narrowed and a little bit more selective. But the end result is a shakeout of companies that really mean what they say, which is a good thing.
So with your firm's focus heavy on the communications and the messaging strategy, not necessarily, you know, optimizing SEO or AdWord purchases, right? How do you go about measuring performance or success that you deliver for your clients?
Oh, yeah. In part, that part of that is the age old question, especially because we do a lot of PR work and it really might have been the first question uttered when language was invented. Can you show me the value of PR? Um, it it's really elusive.
I'm trying to ask that question tactfully, Evan.
Right. No, I know. I got it. When the numbers aren't there, when the numbers don't tie directly into lead gen, it can be really challenging. And we have that conversation with our clients all the time, especially when we get into constricted budgets and clients are start to look at the marketing and strategic comms more as a line item. We end up in the position of defending. Well, is this helping us make money? And yes, it is just we can set targets we can show those targets in terms of reach, in terms of coverage in specific industries. How are we getting in front of the audiences that we're trying to get in front of? But really, it's all about brand awareness. And what our clients find is when they turn off the tap of those sort of harder to measure elements, those harder to measure tactics, in about 9 months to a year, they start to feel it. Brand awareness goes down. They have less with for their marketing team to work with. I mean, all of this strategic comms, all the tactical execution is something that gets fed into the lead gen cycle. So you have more to talk about, you have more to put out there. And when that starts to dry up and you don't have third-party credibility and you're not creating as much content, and you've really isolated the strategies to a few core tactics without the bigger picture being wrapped in, it just doesn't work as well. And clients start to realize that. That's why a lot of our relationships are very long term, because even when times get difficult and challenging economically, our clients want to keep our relationship going because they know shutting it off and then turning it back on later is going to be much more painful.
Let me draw an analogy, and you can tell me if it's on base or off target. So you mentioned having core values, and one of your top core values. And I think businesses can either define and proactively manage their core values, or they can just kind of live with whatever values the people in the organization have or think the business operates under. And I feel like messaging for companies is similar. The market will define the message and the values and the perception of the company and its product and services, or the company can get out ahead of it and help define those and tell the marketplace what their values and goodness is, right? So there's going to be a perception of the company in the marketplace that can help or hurt the sales prospects, right?
That's a great distillation. And one of the key, it leads me to a key phrase, which is, if you're not defining your message, somebody else is. So if you take your foot off the gas with that, yeah, you're no longer in control of how you're being presented, really. And that's dangerous, especially now. So I mean, speed of light in terms of how communication travels, and if you're not part of it, then you're taking a big risk.
There's so many different channels to manage too, right?
Yeah.
How do you go about, you know, overseeing all these different channels that need to get managed?
One of our other core values is embrace lifelong learning, because not only do we steep ourselves in the industries that our clients live and breathe, we also always have to know what's new and testing it out. And there's so many different channels. You're absolutely right. That's why marketing for marketing's sake kind of scares us. If you're just going to pick a tactic, if you're just going to pick a channel and say, hey, we're going to be on Blue Sky. I mean, what does that mean? We have to take a step back, look at the message, look at your audience. Here are the channels that are going to be most effective. I started early in my career at big agency, and at big agency, it was the kitchen sink approach. You go in with a proposal and you tell the prospect, you need everything. You definitely need everything. Because that's where the money is. That's not successful, especially, I mean, our clients are generally small to mid market. That's not effective for them. You got to be selective about the channels that you're pursuing, because it's work, it's money. And if you're doing everything or you're just doing one thing, then it's much harder to know what's working.
That makes sense. So I'd ask you earlier about, your strategy for success, and we went down this path of talking about the importance of being a thought leader for clients and helping them plan their strategy, not just execute the strategy. But we didn't really talk about what success means for your firm. So
Hmm.
how do you define success for Longview Strategies?
Well, you really touched on it. The brand, uh, when everything is aligned with the brand, both internally and externally, uh, that's success. And once that happens, then you talk about the marketing channels, and we do run execution as well as doing the strategy. Once you start running those programs, if it's all tied together with the business strategy and the brand and the values, it invariably works really well. And that's what success looks like. But that's what a program success looks like for our company. It's those long-term relationships. It's hearing our clients tell us that we make them a better company. I mean, most of our clients are 5 to 10 year relationships, and it is so validating, and that's the mark of success. I mean, certainly we like to grow, and but that growth has to be managed in a way that we're able to maintain those types of relationships and have those close partnerships with our clients. It's one thing we haven't been willing to sacrifice.
What are some challenges that are you need to overcome to achieve that success these days? And is there anything that you could use some insight or experience shares with from the audience?
Um, we don't really face any challenges at all ever. So easy. Um, no, you hit it on the head. It's the question of the sort of the amorphous or the ambiguous value of strategic comms. Right now, or not right now, the trend has been for a while. Everything is so tied to lead gen, and it's all so measurable, which is wonderful. But then that starts to call back to strategic communications, and clients want to know, well, if I can measure the engagement of these social posts, or I can measure the click throughs to this landing page and then the conversions, how do I measure the strategic comms? How do I measure the messaging work and the media visibility and the content that we develop? How do I measure that? And it's just, as we talked about, it's a different type of art and science. And that's the biggest challenge.
Are there any benchmarks where, for the industries in which you work, you can kind of say, for the overall marketing spend of the client, X% is around designing the messaging and Y% is executing it and Z% is something else?
I don't know that we've gotten that granular. We do know the general rule. I mean, again, we work the types of companies we work with. Often, the rule of thumb is 3 to 5% of revenue is a good overall budget, not including ad spend. And we go with that benchmark, and then we can drill down into it a little bit more. There are numbers we can use, particularly with PR. I talked about reach, impressions. There's advertising equivalency, which is essentially if you appear in the Wall Street Journal, what is that? How much would you have had to pay in order to place that, and basically gauging the value of that outcome in terms of an advertising spend. That's a somewhat of a dubious way to measure things, I think, but there's an industry standard for that too.
Interesting. You mentioned kind of a specific tactical challenge around shifting from fully remote to back doing in-person events again.
Yeah.
How are you navigating that now?
Yeah. And I'm not sure if I would call it tactical or spiritual, where I'm like all of a sudden trying to figure out what the balance is between Zoom meetings, Zoom coffees, and going to events. I mean, events have been back for a while, and there's so much value in going to them. But we've also all gotten accustomed to this way of interacting with each other. So yeah, we have that conversation a lot, and we have a conversation around what budget is reasonable to assign to travel and events, when some meetings can be done with this, like this, and over Zoom. And I don't have the answer other than to say this year we've been doing a lot more in person. And it's a change.
Yeah, I'll say from my experience, I find it refreshing when I get to do an in-person event.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
there's just something that's missing when you're doing everything over video conference. But it takes time, it takes money, it interrupts your life if you're traveling out of town. So trying to figure out that right balance is definitely
Exactly.
important.
But you're right. I agree. Like the human connection, it's irreplaceable. And the way we exchange energy when we're at an event together with like-minded people is just, it's totally different than when we are talking on a Zoom call.
Yeah, I may be doing a maybe talking to a prospective client about accounting and bookkeeping services. They might be in the next town over and they default to doing a video conference. I'm like,
Hmm.
we can get together and have coffee and build a relationship. But that doesn't happen a lot.
Yeah, I will say that that shift turned us 5 years ago from a regional firm to a national and even international firm. I mean, we have clients in Europe, in California, in Washington State, in Florida. That became totally moot. Our location became totally moot, and that's been a huge benefit, and that's exciting. Some of my favorite calls are, I mean, we have our teams on calls with the people where 7 different countries are represented, and that didn't used to be the case going back, 6 or 7 years.
So I've got to ask you a question about finance and accounting since that's what I do.
What do you know about that?
I won't ask you very many. But what is your take on managing the finances and accounting in your firm? How do you go about doing that?
Well, first of all, I've learned over the past 20 years that I know less than I think I know. I used to really assume that I understood all of that, especially because I started in investor relations. So reading a balance sheet was sort of early in my career. But yeah, first of all, having good people to manage it is really important. Um, we use QuickBooks, and we take a look at all the various indicators in terms of how we manage it. I keep an eye on some leading indicators, and we've got a great formula for client profitability where the clients get everything that they need in that relationship is, of course, the most important thing. But we know what the numbers are in terms of how that's going to help us grow our business and be able to continue to give them everything that they need. So I can get more specific, but I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, I think client profitability is really important.
Yeah.
On one hand, clients don't like to think they're highly profitable to you. On the other hand, you've got to achieve a certain healthy level of profitability to be able to employ the employees and the contractors with the high level of skill to really deliver to meet and exceed client expectations, right? So, you know, you being profitable directly translates into good service for clients. Because if you're not very profitable, you can't afford to make the investments and spend the money to really do a great job for clients. And then you're kind of stuck in that
Yeah.
downward spiral
It
potentially until you can break out of it.
gets a lot more challenging. And there was a point a number of years ago where in that it seems so intuitive, but shifting from firm-wide profitability, just looking at the bottom line and saying, oh, we are profitable, therefore we should be fine. And yet I'm feeling this tension, or I'm seeing this tension in the business, shifting from that to client by client profitability and really understanding what that formula is. So we know, and we talk about it on a monthly basis, where we should be expecting tension if a client is being underserviced. That's something that we talk about. I mean, there are I'm sure there are firms out there that would look at a client that's being vastly underserviced and saying, "Oh, well, we're much more profitable on that client. That's great." We don't look at it that way because the client relationship is so important. Eventually, they're going to feel that. So we take a close look at those numbers, and we also look at utilization across the board. No, we are not a management consulting firm where people are in jeopardy if they're not fully utilized in billable hours. But it's a great stat for us to know And we do have like a target of utilization, because that starts to swing the profitability as well.
Right. I think that's astute, Evan, that you made the transition from just looking at firm, bottom line firm profitability into things that are more leading indicators that you can operationally manage, whether it's client profitability, whether it's your team's utilization. Those are the things that you can operationalize and manage. And ultimately the firm profitability is kind of an output of all the other work that you're doing.
Right. Yeah. Well said. You know what you're talking about on that one.
What excites you about the future in your industry or your firm, Evan?
Not to be too lame, but AI, there's me and everybody else, I guess. We can do so much more with AI, and everybody at our firm embraces that we can free up more time, again, because we want to be steeped in our client's industry, because we want to share the position of strategic partners with them. A lot of our thinking goes there. I mean, that's where we use our minds at there first, and then again the tactics, which is comes out of that. AI has the ability to free up so much of our time to focus on the strategy and understanding the clients and the relationships. It's really exciting. We're playing with a lot of different ways that we can implement.
To what extent are you concerned AI commoditizes the industry versus allows a greater separation of firms who are able to provide the thought leadership from those who cannot?
Mm, it's interesting because I think the industry is starting to get commoditized anyway because of the emphasis on digital and that formulaic approach that can really be, once you've got the formulaic approach, you can apply it to any client. Um, AI allows us to, I mean, there will be some areas that are commoditized, or at least the pricing gets influenced, which I guess is the same thing. Well, when we talk about all the content that we develop, it takes us less time to develop the content. And we are very careful about how we use AI in content development. It is as an aid, a calculator, not a replacement for human. Everything has to be human. In fact, they have the AI checkers, and 10% is our 10% AI is our threshold for anything that gets delivered to a client. But even with humanizing all that, it shaves a ton of time off. And what that means is we can do more for clients. And that's how we talk about it with them. We're not afraid of that conversation. There will be things that get commoditized. And that just means that we won't need as big a team. Not that as we have right now, our entire team is engaged in this effort. As our firm continues to grow, we won't need to add as many people in order to achieve what we would have had to achieve 5 years ago.
That makes sense. Let's switch gears a minute here and go back in time. Take a time capsule back to little Evan, or when you're in school. You know, did you know you'd one day, found and own and manage businesses, or were there milestones along the way that led you to where you are now?
Definitely not. Little Evan had no interest in being a business person whatsoever. And little Evan is still alive and well, and he does other things, and he still has no interest in running the business. He does other things with his time, which is great. Um, Grown-up Evan loves it, though, loves running the business. Well, when I was young, I was much more focused on writing. That's how I sort of began everything. And I started in journalism and then got into investor relations and public relations and all that. In terms of becoming an owner, it's actually a great entrepreneurial story. I was a minority owner in a small cross-border firm, and my partner got into some tax difficulties overseas. And one day I woke up and he was gone, as were 75% of our clients. And suddenly it was my business, and I had to decide what to do with it. I mean, he literally had to pack up and get out of the country, sold the clients, and I was left trying to figure out what to do next, whether to go get a job or whether to take ownership of it and run it myself, which I did, and worked out pretty good.
Hmm. Nothing like having your hand forced on you, I
Yeah.
guess. Time to step up and do what you have to do.
Greatness is thrust upon us.
And so these days, um, your focus is really management or early strategic communication for a select number of industries, which is great. If you could go back in time to when you had that hand thrust upon you, are there things you've learned over the years that would cause you have done something differently when you took over the business?
Um, well, I think I could have made it a lot easier on myself. It's funny when you're first learning everything. In terms of, there's nothing tactical that I would necessarily do differently. I would just have I would have wanted to trust myself a little bit more. It's hard to trust yourself sometimes when you are trying to create something and trying to move something. And when you hit up against obstacles, knowing that this too shall pass, that's been a big one, especially the past 10 years. Having the patience to know that if you trust yourself and you have a plan and you have stress tested the plan, it's probably going to be okay. There are externalities you got to worry about. And of course, you have to make adjustments here and there. But sometimes as a business owner, you may be familiar with this, the anxiety creeps in there, the doubt creeps in there, the negative self-talk, and just trust yourself and be patient.
Yeah, patience, I think, could be a double-edged sword. You've got to have the, maturity or experience or whatever to understand when to be patient and when you've got to take action now and try
Yeah.
not to confuse those two things, right? You can get in a lot of trouble being impatient when you really just need to give something time to work out. Or you can really get in trouble if you let something go poorly for too long because you're being patient and hope it works itself out when you need to take action now to make it work out.
That's true. I had a wise man once put it in terms of being able to to detach, not take things as personally, which as some entrepreneurs, not all entrepreneurs, have a tendency to do, tied up in the business, intertwining personal with the business. Um, to really detach and know what is the impact to the business of whatever has just happened. What's the true impact to the business? Map that out, and then think about the decision point you were just talking about. Does action really need to be taken now, or can I just wait to see how this plays out? Or do I not touch this and I need to pull this other lever over here because so the impact of the business is this is probably going to have a negative effect, but if I focus over here, this is going to have a positive effect, and I'm going to balance those things out. And having the wherewithal to not panic about it, but take a an informed approach. Um, but I also like this too shall pass, because sometimes we get pretty riled up.
Someone once told me I should always remember, when I started being a business owner, that I needed to remember things are never as good as they seem, nor as bad as they seem,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
When the sales pipeline is full and you're closing business and utilization targets are getting hit and you're nicely profitable and growing, things seem awesome. But there's probably something that's about to go wrong because you're not paying attention to it because you think everything's so great.
yeah.
When things look really poor because you've had a bad couple of months and, but you've been doing all the right things. They just haven't paid off yet. That's when the patience comes in.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good point. And it's a good, like, this too shall pass also applies to the positive things. When everything's clicking and going really well, enjoy it because something's going to come in. And you're right. It's not a straight line to success.
Outside of work, Evan, what do you like to do?
I like to, we're a big music family. So I have two two boys who play a lot of music, and I play with them. I listen as well. Probably do more listening than playing these days because they're getting a lot better than me. I do a lot of running, and in my advancing age, I have also I just started to take up kickboxing with my youngest, and that's been a fun new sport to test out a little bit.
So music is something that fascinates me, although I have no musical skill. I listen to music, but one of my regrets in life is I just avoided music class as much as I could when I was in school and never had any interest in learning any instruments outside of school. I kind of did the minimum and gave up as soon as I got to high school. We didn't have to do music anymore. But in hindsight, I kind of regret that because I look at people who know how to play the guitar or whatever, um, and I'm a little jealous because I think there are a lot of great facets to music. For
Yeah.
me, I like listening to it. Sometimes I hear a song and it triggers some memory from years ago that I identify with that song or something. But if I could actually produce the music and play the music, that would be pretty cool too.
It's also a great way to detach from pressure, detach from work. When you're playing an instrument, sorry, well, I should say when I'm playing an instrument, it is not possible for me to be thinking about work. I'm in the music. And that kind of break and switching from the different sides of the brain, it's really important. We have to have ways to do that.
I bet the same is true with kickboxing, right?
That's true. You don't want to be too distracted.
Yeah. I've used exercise, as kind of my outlet or escape. There's certain times if I'm gonna go for a long bike ride or a long run, it's kinda slow to moderate pace. I do think a lot about work, but I'm out of the office, I'm outside of the standard environment, and I can be a little bit more creative in when I'm thinking. But then there are other times when I'm lifting weights or running a sprint at the track, and I'm just focused on, doing what I need to do to get through that set, and I
Yeah.
have no time to think about work. I'm just really focused on the moment then, which is nice.
Yeah. Do you race?
Well, I had a period that ended a few years back when I was doing a lot of triathlons,
Mm,
which, was great, but involved a lot of training
yeah.
time, and then my kids got to a certain age, and I just wanted to spend time with them, coaching their sports teams. I just didn't have, 10 or 12 hours a week to train for triathlons like I did when before they were born or when they were, very young. So I kind of transitioned into more shorter, high intensity training and coaching my kids.
Nice. Nice. And then you can go back to it too. Triathlon, much respect. I have not done a triathlon. Maybe something to work up to, but man, I am a slow swimmer. Cannot get slower than me. Almost not moving.
Well, yeah, I was never really a distance athlete growing up either, but a while back, my sister talked me into signing up for a sprint distance triathlon. And it's ironic, they call it a sprint, but it still takes at least an hour to do.
Yeah.
So it's not really a sprint. But that was my first one I did back in 2007, I guess. And I worked my way up into the half Ironman distances. Then I
Yeah, that's
personal
impressive.
best was, 5 hours, 17 minutes. So that was a long,
Yeah.
long race.
I but just more power to you. I don't see myself getting there.
Yeah. I don't think I'm doing that again in life. I've transitioned to other things. Who knows?
Well, you got to check a very, very large box there.
So, Evan, this has been a great conversation. If folks want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to reach you?
Yeah, LinkedIn is easy. So just Evan Zall, somewhere in LinkedIn. I'll be there.
All right. Well, thank you, Evan, for everything you've shared. Hopefully, the audience has walked away with at least one good piece of information or insight they can apply. I love how you talked about your values and trying to align and clarify client values to position them for success and talking through some of the challenges you faced and your kind of evolution and how you think about managing finances at the business. So thank you so much for your time
Yeah.
today.
No, it's a pleasure. Love talking about this stuff and happy to do it anytime. And if anyone wants to talk shop, definitely reach out.
For those listening, if you learned something today or you laughed or you cried or whatever, tell somebody about this podcast. Let's get some of this good information into other people's hands and provide some thought leadership and help to your peers. Well, thanks again, Evan.
Thank you.
This has been another exciting episode of the Marketing Agency Power Hour. We'll see you all next time. Another episode in the books. Thank you so much for tuning in. For show notes and more, please visit marketingagencypowerhour.com. This show is sponsored by SmartBooks, providing marketing agencies with bookkeeping, accounting, and finance support. With SmartBooks, you gain the clarity and confidence to make your agency a success. Until next time,